Hello, friends. Welcome to Born to Be All of Me, the podcast. I am your host, Amber Sousa, and I am here with the lovely Kaitlin Henry. Yay! I'm so happy to have you here. And we were just chatting before I hit record, and I was like, okay, I gotta hit record because we're in it. We're already in the conversation. Some of you listening might know Kaitlin from my Instagram live that I recently shared talking about my alcohol-free challenge. So I reached out to Kaitlin. I was like, I loved having that conversation so much. And I really want to continue the conversation. And I want to be able to share even more of your story with the people that listen to this podcast, because I know that you are also on a journey of being and becoming all of who you were born to be.
Yeah.
And I know I was thinking before we got on how all of me has become kind of like my brand. And I remember when I came up with my old studio that I had, it was called All of Me, and I spelled it ALLOMI. And I was in the shower one night, and again, we were just talking about how sometimes God has a different plan than we do. And we're like, really, God? Really? This is the plan? So my original plan was to have this new studio be a part of my old studio. And it was going to just be an extension of. But my ex-business partner did not have that same vision, and it got a little sticky. So I was forced to pivot into the other plan that was being presented to me. So I had to come up with a new name. And I was in the shower, and I was throwing out all these different names, and all of a sudden what came to me was all of me, all of me. That's what this journey that I'm on seems to be about. And what I was thinking before we hopped on was how that name, that word, those three words, all of me, it also continues to evolve its meaning. And most recently, offering alcohol-free support to people seems to be another, like extension of I am more of who I am. I am more all of me when I am not numbing and using substance.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I want you to share however that all resonates with you. I'd love to hear more of your story and how you have arrived at the place that you're at right now as a life coach and a speaker and a writer, supporting people to live their best life, their greatest potential, supporting them living alcohol free. So take us back to the beginning. What was little Kaitlin like?
100%. And I think a huge part of that is the fact that that's not how I felt 5 years ago. So that is why it has been my journey. And the greatest gift is to offer others what you wish had been offered to you in your moment of greatest pain. And that's what I've really taken these last 5 years and done. And so to go back all the way to the beginning, because now we have time. Gosh, my dad at the dinner table pushed me my first glass of wine at age 9. And he said, we do this as a family. You know, alcohol is a normal part of our lives and society. You can try it. Feel free to try it. And so what that did was it instilled in my head, this is normal. Everybody drinks. And this is what we do as a family. And it was no matter what. Like if we were playing a lawn game outside, like bocce or something, or if we were going out for dinner, it was always drinks were involved. And it wasn't like they were ordering me drinks when I was 9, but they were. I was watching my parents and I was watching those around me use it for everything, funerals, weddings. And so again, it just instilled this idea in me that this is normal and we do it all the time. And so as I was growing up, there was the normal stuff, right? You start drinking with your friends in maybe middle school or high school and testing it out.
Please don't say middle school. My daughter just started middle school. No.
I know. And it's so crazy because I feel like we're all so connected now because of social media and we have access to phones and locations, but kids are still getting away with stuff. And that's, a whole nother conversation. But I think it's about wanting to numb feelings. So maybe if you are a parent like I am, I'm teaching
Hmm.
my kids how to feel their feelings. I'm
Yes.
also a good example showing them that that's not what we do. So cutting generational ties of alcoholism for my family is huge. And so basically, again, hopefully not too much in middle school, but high school started like partying with my friends, testing out weed. It was never my thing, but like just testing it and always pushing it to its limits. And the reason I found myself doing that was because I was always so uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt like no one taught me how to be in my own skin. At age 9, it was again like those young ages, anything before the age of 10 gets set in your subconscious. And I remember looking up at the stars and saying, why are we here? No
Mm.
one was explaining to me why I felt so out of place in this society where, religious beliefs were coming in, school beliefs with your peers are coming in. And again, these parents who are doing the best that they can with what they've been taught. But I was questioning everything. And so again, I felt so uncomfortable. I started drinking in high school. It made me immediately feel like I was the life of the party. It
Hmm.
made me feel like I could be somebody that I didn't feel when I wasn't drinking. I was more outgoing. Everybody thought I was funny. I think I got voted like craziest in the yearbook because people thought I was this outgoing person. Come to find out in sobriety, I'm an introverted extrovert.
Hmm.
I actually like a lot of downtime and recharge, but I can be very extroverted and do things like this even are, very extroverted for me, but it takes me a lot of time to recharge. And what alcohol did was it allowed me to kind of be this thing that I wanted to be, I guess. And then again, I didn't know how to just be, like you say, all of me. I didn't
Mm.
know who all of me was. Like, who am I? No one, again, was teaching me this in school. It's all core curriculum and back then there wasn't Instagram or anybody talking about their feelings or being able to find somebody online. We were just starting AOL. So
Yeah.
um, jumping in afterwards to college did the same thing. I thought you went to college to party and to find friends. I didn't realize you were there to like commit to a career because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I
Hmm.
stayed undecided and partied my face off. I was in New York City, so
Hmm.
staying out at the bars till 4, going to after parties. And I finally decided on my major like 2 years in because they forced me. So I
Right.
was in communications. I got my degree. Again, always skated by with like these things of not getting into trouble. I never was the partier who people were like, oh yeah, she drinks too much. I just
Hmm.
drank as much as those around me. I kind of got into some things where if I got caught, I would have gotten into trouble, but I never was getting into trouble. It was always these things where I was drinking to numb my feelings and I was getting away with it. And
Hmm.
I didn't even know I was doing it. Again, I didn't have anyone helping me along or telling me. Um, and I think this is what guided me to be a life coach, truly, was I just want to be that person I wish I had back then. And so moving on, I ended up moving from New York City to LA. And about a year or two in, I met my future husband. We partied the same way, drank the same way. And I was like, this is it. Like, again, I don't know who I am. I'm going to let this person dictate a lot of our life. And the fact that I just feel like I need to be a stay at home mom because, again, didn't have that purpose, didn't have something I was trying to attain or a goal that I was working towards. I just kind of was letting life happen to me. And I married him. And soon after, we had our first child. I want to say within like a year, then we got pregnant. And I thought becoming a mom would make me happy and fulfilled and all of me. I
Mm.
really did. I was like, this is it. Like, I've always wanted to be a mom. I was always like a babysitter and nanny. So I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can do the thing I was born to do. And what I watched my mom do, she was a stay at home mom. And so I had the baby and then I started crying like every day. And I was like,
Mm.
what's wrong with me? And the doctor goes, oh, it's just like postpartum, like little bit. You don't have like, you're not really postpartum depression. We don't need to address this. This is normal. Everybody cries within the first 6 weeks every day. And I was like, huh, okay. And
Wow.
so I remember starting like a mommy and me group. And that's really the first time I saw women talking about their feelings and emotions openly. And
Mhm.
not everybody. I would say if there were 10 of us, only like 1 to 2 were actually saying what it was really like.
Yeah.
But I was kind of getting exposure to, maybe I can share how this feels. And so I did, and I got through it, but I started drinking the same way I did prior to having children. And I thought getting married and having kids would slow me down. And
Mm.
really, it sped it up because I was not happy. So it was like, not like I could go out to the bars all the time, but I was kind of living the life I was living pre kids, after kids. At my son's first birthday, I had a bartender and shots of tequila for everybody.
Mhm.
Again, just like normalized by society. Nobody questioned it. We put the baby down safely and we all kept partying like almost all night long. And I remember getting in fights with my husband, and then we'd wake up and we'd just blame the alcohol. Oh, we should probably stop drinking vodka. That's what's making us angry. Oh, like that was just because we drank too much that time, when in all reality, we were drinking too much every time. But again,
Mhm.
like not getting caught, not getting in trouble. And so, my son was a year old at that party, and then we got pregnant with my second and had her exactly 2 years apart, and again stayed sober through these pregnancies. It wasn't like I knew that I should, so I just did, which made me believe I wasn't an alcoholic. If I can stay sober through 9 months of pregnancy and beyond, right, with breastfeeding and all that, I'm okay. I'm not an alcoholic. And I didn't even realize alcohol was really affecting me negatively. Again, I was using it as a crutch. So she was born, and I started drinking again within months, of the same way I drank before. And this time it was almost worse because I was like, again, I thought this baby would make me happy. And it's not making me happy. And I'm kind of miserable, but I don't know why. And in hindsight, I'm realizing that it was because I always felt purposeless. Again, I thought it would be college and a career that would make me feel like I had a purpose. I thought it would be having babies, getting married, and all of these things were not fulfilling that, what they say is like a God-sized hole. Like I didn't rely on any power outside of me. I was just, I got to do this all on my own. And so then 7 months after I had her, so I had a 2.5-year-old, a 7 month old, and I found out I was pregnant again.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was like, holy moly, this was not planned, but it's God's plan. And we always wanted three. And I was like, it's fine. This will make me happy. I'll have another baby.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so she came along, and thankfully I had part-time help. I don't know how anyone could do it otherwise. And again, I still stayed the stay-at-home mom. There's no way I could go find a career then. I was already floundering, and I stayed sober through her pregnancy. I had like little sips or tastings of a wine here or there, but like never any more than that. And so I ended up having her. And again, the same cycle. I think champagne and sushi were brought into that delivery room because I was like, at that, once you have three, you're like, everything's fine.
Oh, I had champagne brought in to both of my children's right after birth. Oh yeah. I was
It's
like,
so normalized. God forbid the hospital says, like, that's a toxin, by the way. You probably shouldn't
yeah,
have that while
right
breastfeeding.
after you, yeah. Oh my
And
goodness.
you're trying to recover and all of this stuff. So this is really a holistic approach too to my sobriety now. Is it does take what foods you're putting in your body, what anything you're putting in your body. I really am careful now. That took
Mhm.
about a year of getting rid of alcohol in order to look at that, but that's a whole nother topic as well. So I have her champagne and sushi in the room, and again go right back to the cycle. I start drinking the way that I drank before, and I'm realizing slowly but surely, alcohol is not a problem on the outside, and no one's telling me I have a problem, but why do I feel like shit? Like,
Mhm.
why do I feel like this? And the only thing, when I worked with like a trainer, the only thing I said, I'll change my diet, I'll do whatever. I'm not getting rid of wine. I refuse. Like,
Mhm.
I just had this notion that, like, I'll get rid of dessert. I don't need sugar, but
Yeah.
I need wine. And again, in hindsight, looking back and being like, oh, there was a problem, but like you didn't think it was a problem. And so it was, gosh, so I had her in January, and then a little before October rolls along. I want to say it was August. I started Al-Anon. And I decided that it was my dad's fault. He drank too much. He was the one that introduced me to this is the way of life. I'm going to try to go work on my issues with him. And I started Al-Anon, which is for family members of alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started therapy. And between the two of them, I had the best therapist because she never, I would say the same thing I said to my trainer, I'm just not willing to give up wine. And then, started Al-Anon and was slowly but surely looking at alcohol a little differently, like starting to have these feelers out. And I, again, like just not waking up, just kind of like blaming it on everyone else, like saying my problems are because this is happening to me or this person is doing this to me. And I end up breaking my foot out of the blue. Like it wasn't because I had been drinking at the time. I was actually on a juice cleanse, taking a break from alcohol. I slipped and I fell down the stairs and I went to the doctor. They put a boot on my foot and I was on crutches and I had these 3 kids that were 4 and under.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
got home and I threw my leg on the couch and I was like, gosh, I need to be careful while I'm on crutches. I should probably just lessen my drinking or maybe just not drink at all. And immediately saw my wine fridge across the room. And I was like, wait a minute, I just said I wasn't going to drink, but I have this urge to get up and drink. And that was the first time I realized that I didn't really have this filter I thought I had. I thought I could pick and choose. I could wait till a Thursday night. I wasn't drinking morning till night. I was going out with my friends on weekends and binge drinking, but always holding it together, always getting home for the kids, always managing the household, I'll bet grudgingly. I was so irritable and discontent and didn't know that that wasn't how I was supposed to be feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at this wine fridge and I pick up my journal and I start journaling about this girl who has a problem with alcohol but doesn't know she has a problem with alcohol. And then I open my laptop and I Google girl that feels like alcoholic but isn't one. And it was
Wow.
really the catalyst for me to be like, wow, I'm going to say this out loud, but I'm not going to admit that I'm an alcoholic because if I admit I'm an alcoholic, I can never turn back. I can
Mm-hmm.
never say I'm not. And so I started to research sober curious and gray area drinking. And so these terms were coming up about women and men who felt like me, who were like, well, I can handle alcohol. It's not really an issue. I'm not getting in trouble. No one's telling me to go to rehab. I'm not getting DUIs. I'm safe enough to take an Uber, whatever. And I start diving in and I start feeling some feelings that I never felt before. And I'm like, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm just a gray area drinker. I don't have these limits. I'm more in this box of like, there's a spectrum of addiction and mine might be in the middle, but it's not all the way to alcoholic. So, how can I process this? I had no friends that were sober. And so I ended up starting an Instagram account and I started posting only words and I wouldn't post a picture. And I started talking about, like, I would post a quote and then talk about how it made me feel. And all of a sudden, these people, mostly women, started to follow me and they said, I feel the way you feel. I feel that way about alcohol, but I don't know what to do about it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting back going, well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing either. But I do know that by sharing this, I'm feeling some relief and it's making me not want to drink for longer periods of time. And so I stayed sober for like 2 months and I started posting quotes and journaling a lot and changing my whole routine. I started doing Kundalini yoga in the morning. I started meditating and I was really going inward instead of listening to outward what society would tell me. I'm seeing billboards for alcohol. There's 7-Elevens up the street. Alcohol's at my local grocery store because in California, you can buy it any day of the week, anywhere you want. And instead of listening to society and what my parents had taught me, I started to finally question how was alcohol making me feel? And that's what I'm always telling others. No one can tell you how alcohol makes you feel. But if you're questioning it, listen to that intuitive voice. Let it breathe long enough and remove alcohol long enough, whatever that looks like for you, days, weeks, months, in order to start to hear that inner knowing. And so I started listening to that voice and I'm posting these quotes on Instagram and I'm staying sober. But then all of a sudden, I went to a girls' trip in New York City and somebody pushed me champagne. And this Instagram account was private, like to my friends and family. It was a public account. but I wasn't telling anyone. I wasn't
Mm.
stating out loud to people in my inner circle how I was feeling. I barely told my husband. I said, I'm thinking about stopping drinking again, but I don't know.
Okay.
And so I went on a girls' trip and someone passed me champagne. And without even thinking about it, I took it and I started drinking. And I was like, why again? Did I do the thing I said I don't want to do? And I felt so good for those 2 months. Why am I still choosing alcohol? And I didn't get in trouble that night. I drank 4 or 5 drinks over the course of the entire evening with dinner and dancing and out to a bar. I woke up with like a slight hangover. I got on an airplane. They served more alcohol on the airplane. I was like, well, I already had it, so I might as
Why
well.
not?
And I had a couple glasses of champagne and I got home to my 3 kids. And again, they're so little still. My daughter was almost 1. I had a 2-year-old and I had the 4-year-old. And I walked in and they were so excited to see me and there was so much joy on their faces. And I thought, when in my life did I feel that I needed alcohol in order to feel that unaltered joy? Like
Mm.
I call it unaltered because it's like they're not being impacted by substances at that age. They're still kind of connected to the divine in my eyes. They're like really those little angel beings. And it's like, when did that get cut off for me? When did I start using this substance? And that was then and there that I stopped drinking for good. So it was January 28th of 2019. And I from there still was too scared to try an AA meeting. I was too scared to call myself an alcoholic. So I still white knuckled it, is what they call it. And I did everything with my Instagram still. I tried to create a mom's group on Meetup. I knew that
Okay.
I needed community. I
Yeah.
knew that I needed something more. And I got through my husband's 40th birthday, which was a huge rager. I had 2 bartenders, a sommelier, and I was like, if I want to drink, I'll drink. It was in March. And I didn't drink. And afterwards,
Wow.
I thought, if I'm really going to do this thing, I have to kind of put myself out there. And that was when I posted my first picture on my Instagram account. And so
Okay.
instead of just talking about my feelings via a quote, I posted a photo. And then I started to get more followers. And I was like, all right, there's something to this. Everyone is kind of feeling this way. Everyone, people like me are starting to feel this way.
Right.
And so after that, I went a few more months and then again, I just felt like I was white knuckling it. And I finally went back to the internet because I wasn't going to go do anything in person yet. And I typed in sober and a friend from my youth popped up. So grateful for my 8 years of sobriety. And so I direct messaged him and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm about 3, 4 months sober. Like, can you help me? Tell me how you made friends. What do you do?
Uh,
And so he wrote back and he said, the stigmas of AA aren't true. You should try a meeting. Here's the number for multiple women. He gave me like 4 women's numbers and then gave women my number. And he said, it's really what saved me. It's the only thing that's worked for me. And at that
mm.
point, I was willing to try anything. And I needed that friendly, familiar face, which again, I kind of hope to be for other women who are feeling like me. I want them to see that someone like me has a problem with alcohol and I can admit it, even though no one's telling me I have a problem.
Mhm.
And I think they call it an Eskimo, like this person that helps walk you into the rooms. And so I talked to these women. I started going to women's meetings. I started a couple other meetings and I finally went to AA and I finally said, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm.
But what it did for me, because I don't like how they say you're powerless over alcohol. I really truly believe that by stating you're an alcoholic and removing alcohol from your life, you're powerful over alcohol. It's like I can choose to drink anytime I want. If I want to go after this podcast and grab a drink up at CVS or a bar up the street, I can. So I'm powerful over alcohol. But to say I'm an alcoholic today just means that I'm grateful to know that there's something different about me that I need to get extra help for. And I found that help in the rooms and with community and with other people that would share their feelings, talk about how alcohol was making them feel. And although I couldn't relate to every single story, it didn't matter. I took everything with a grain of salt and then I applied it to my life, like what did impact me. And there's so many people in there who have spiritual experiences, who talk about how turning it over to a higher power really is the thing that clicked for them. And I got to do all of that by working the steps. And so, fast forward, going through all the steps and doing that with my first sponsor, I felt relief I had never felt before because it's in order for a reason. You go through your resentments and then you say everything out loud to someone, things that I had never said to anyone about my youth, about my marriage, like the list goes on, but I finally said them out loud to the point I wasn't even saying them to a therapist. And so once I said it out loud to my sponsor, I took it to a therapist and I got to heal and work on it more. And
Mhm.
now what I'm seeing through my third, fourth, and fifth year now of sobriety is I am the woman, like you say, who is all of me. I've now accepted these things about myself. I got to make amends for things that were weighing on me and creating this disconnect between me and my higher power and my alignment for who I want to be and what I want to do. And so just about 2 years ago now, I think I went in and I went to get certified for life coaching because I had gone to grad school for a little bit to be a therapist. And what I
Mm.
really realized is therapy is about the past and it's about the present too, but it's more trauma related. It's more sorting through diagnosing depression, things like that. And what I realized was I'm more of a life coach because I want to work with people where they're at and take them to their vision of what they see for themselves. So if that looks like 6 months down the road or a year down the road, holding them accountable to their vision and their goals and taking the tiny steps that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Because my life coaching program now is what I wish I had prior to sobriety. I think that it would have gotten me there quicker. And I'll end with like this part of it is just I was at like what I call step zero. And I was walking towards step one, but it took me 9 months to get to that step one. And again, like just wanting to create that safe space for people to share their feelings, to get it all out, and to know that they're not alone
Mhm.
is everything to me and what really like drives me today to help keep me sober even, right? Like I'm sure
Yeah.
you feel the same about starting your group and your 30-day challenges. It really helps keep you in the zone of like, yes, this is what I want for my life.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. That is an incredible story. And there's so much that you shared that is so valuable, right? For anyone who's listening, whether they identify as a problem drinker or an alcoholic or not, right? But there are so many things that you shared that are just valuable for any human who wants to feel comfortable in their body, right? Who wants to live a life that is authentic
Mhm.
to who they are and who they were meant to be, born to be. I think it's so valuable and helpful to hear your story about how societal conditioning showed up for you at age 9. And I think that goes for the majority of us, right? That we were not modeled, no matter what kind of family we grew up in. Like I grew up in a very loving home,
Yeah.
but it was a different time and a different, it was a different generation. And we didn't, uh, we didn't have the kinds of conversations that we are having now with our children.
Yeah.
And yes, alcohol was, my parents would have like their after dinner Kahlua sometimes, or my dad, like I have home videos of me like getting a beer for him, when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, and like pouring it in his frosty mug and bringing it to him. And like that's just what it was. It wasn't like a big deal. And but I can see what you're saying, that at a subconscious level, that conditioning, that alcohol is a part of our life, right? It's a part of how we socialize. It's a part of everything, whatever we're feeling or experiencing, it's incorporated.
Yes.
um and I think it's so important to also, like, you had moments as a young child where you looked up at the sky and you were like, why am I here? What
Yeah.
is, right? You weren't having these conversations with people. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to have these conversations with my kids today. I'm able to model for them, uh, feeling all the feelings and being all of who I am without numbing, without using substance, which you are too. And yes, leading this group that I'm leading right now, um, supporting women and men, but right now primarily women, who are drawn to me, who have held shame for so long, right? About sabotaging behaviors and patterns that are subconsciously driven. Like you
Yeah.
said, in that moment when you saw the wine fridge, that was not coming from your higher self. That was like a subconscious belief that was imprinted, like, this is what you do. You
And
have
just a
uncovered.
habit, right? Like
That's
that
right.
takes
Yeah.
so many days to break a habit. Some people say 21, some people say 40, some people are in the program 90 days until that like habit goes away. But
Right.
it really is, like you're saying, subconscious habit.
Yeah.
I mean, I even do it with like popcorn at the end of the night now. Like sometimes I'll make popcorn and then all of a sudden I find myself making it night after night after night. And I'm like, do I even want this, or am I doing this because I'm in the habit now?
Yes.
And
Yes.
really crushing that at all times. And I work with people on shadow beliefs, which are these things that happen before the age of 9 in your life that you have made meaning of a story that becomes a belief in your
Mhm.
subconscious, and you don't even know that you're acting on it.
Right.
And it's so true. It's like, yeah, breaking
Did
that.
you have you seen the movie Inside Out 2 yet with your kids?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We just watched it last weekend, and I'm anybody who's listening, I don't care if you have kids or not, go see this movie, right? Inside Out 2, because they do it so brilliantly. They show you how these beliefs, right, are born. And they come from this place of wanting to belong, wanting to fit in, wanting to feel a sense of connection. And you talked about that like in high school. I I remember that same exact thing. Like, that was a way for me to feel a sense of connection, a sense of community. Um, when I was 19, I went to rehab for crystal meth addiction, and I tell the story in my book. But I remember vividly what I felt like the first time that I tried it. I felt like a fucking rock star, and I also did not care about all the things that I cared so deeply about, and I hated that I cared so deeply. Like, I wanted to be the kind of person that could just like not care about anything, right? Because I felt everything so deeply, and I still do. So that substance gave me a sense of freedom. And I talk about this a lot with the people that I support is, what are you really searching for in the drink or in the drug or in the whatever it is? What are you searching for? Freedom, connection, purpose, right? Peace. And so how I approach supporting people in an alcohol-free life is really from that holistic standpoint. Like, how can we experience that without the sabotaging behaviors that are also going to bring with it all the shame and all the guilt, and just, taking hits off the self-esteem, right? Because I don't know about you, but I had this moment. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in 4.5 years, so very close, right, to you. I was in 12 step many, many years ago. This time I am not. And, it's just different for everybody. It's whatever level of support that you feel like you need, and that's why I'm also really feeling passionate about wanting to provide this kind of support for people who may not feel like they are ready for a 12 step, or maybe that's not even for them at all, or maybe they need additional support. But I had this moment. I dropped the kids off their first day of school a couple weeks ago, and I drove away, and I felt such gratitude and joy. And I remember the first day of school 5 years ago. I had had too much wine the night before, and I was foggy. I was irritable. I was anxious, and I was a little like shaky, and like that kind of dehydrated, like not very present feeling. And I felt so much shame.
Yeah.
I felt so much shame, and I felt like people could tell, right? Like, can they smell the alcohol on me? Can they tell that I'm not like, there's so much inner dialogue, and nobody would have probably known that was going on with me at the time. I mean, I owned a holistic health and healing studio, for God's sakes. I was all about health and wellness, but my life wasn't synced up in every area yet.
Well, and
So
yeah, and you're just pouring the shame on top of whatever shame is underneath that too, which is why I
yes,
suggest groups like yours or a coach like we are, or whatever like group modality you want, or therapy, right? Because it's like you have to work on those shameful things. They don't just go away because you're aware of them. So
right.
it's like, yes, let's not create any more new ones, but like, what's the underlying? Because I was drinking over something I was ashamed of during my youth that I had
Mm,
never said out loud. And I
yeah,
didn't know I was doing that until I went to therapy, until I worked a 12-step program. And like you said, we're so lucky now because you don't necessarily have to go to AA. You don't necessarily have to even use a 12-step program, although I do recommend that everybody goes to some sort of 12-step. Again, it's like Al-Anon, you can go to OA, there's even sex, love, addiction. All of those are great. And we also have resources like, again, if you're not willing to go in person, get on Facebook, get on the internet. There's like no beer 1 year, there's Annie Grace's, whatever. There's so many
yeah.
things now that were not
Ruby
available.
Ruby Warrington, Sober Curious. I read that book. Yeah,
Yep.
I
And
read that
five
book.
years ago, we didn't have those things. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm a huge proponent. And I always say, like, well, this is what ended up working for me. So I like to share that about my story. If
exactly.
you
Yeah,
are too scared to go, I urge you to just try it. Or now there's Zoom groups for it as well.
right.
But I totally agree with you. Like, whatever it is, don't let something hold you back from trying some kind of community support.
Yeah.
With
I had a woman in this current group that I'm running, and our very first Zoom call, she got really emotional and she said, "This is the first time that I am sharing this out loud." And I was just like, I felt so honored. I know you feel that way too. Like,
I have goosebumps because I've had
oh,
that experience with clients, and it's like so amazing to offer
it's
that
so,
safe space. Again,
yes.
you probably wish you had that. I wish I had.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's magical. And like you said that, right? That is a first step, is speaking something out loud, right? Just saying it out loud, it's so healing. It's so healing. Um, the other thing I want to go back to, because I love it so much, when you saw the look on your children's faces and you saw that pure joy and you had that moment where you thought, oh my God, when's the last time that I felt that
Yeah.
level of joy? The first chapter of my book is called Awe and Wonder. And it's because I had that same question for myself. What happened? As a child, I had this like enthusiasm for life. I experienced a sense of awe and wonder about the most mundane things, right? And what happened? That was my, like, I had this insatiable desire to understand how that was lost. What have you discovered on your journey? How that was lost, and have you rediscovered your sense of awe and wonder? And where do you find that today?
Yeah, I think a huge part of my journey, that what this is bringing up for me is that I grew up in, a religious-based background. We weren't like super going to church every single week, but we definitely had like an Episcopalian background. And so they were telling me things about God and about Jesus that were very old school.
Mhm.
They call it Catholic light. And I didn't relate to it at all. And I started to question, why do I feel like everyone's lying to me? And therefore put up this wall and this boundary with whatever energy, God, universe there was. There was like a hardcore wall put up because I was like,
Mhm.
I don't believe what you're telling me. I'm confused. But again, I wasn't willing to talk about it. I was just kind of brushing it under the rug, thinking that your parents just told you whatever they were supposed to tell you. And so I think throughout my journey, and I'm so lucky that I started to go to church before I got sober. This was part of the therapy. This was part of my getting on Instagram. I was starting to open up to, okay, I believe in the universal energy. There's some energy out there, but I feel like I need to find what that is. And so a friend invited me to like a Bible study and a church. And so I started attending. And within that story, I was telling you about breaking my foot and questioning alcohol and going to therapy. I actually had an experience at church. I don't talk about this a lot, but I'm going to talk about it in my upcoming book.
Yay.
And yay. So I went to church, and I was probably, that 2 months I stayed sober, I drank again. And I remember going to church soon after. and I wanted sobriety so bad, but I couldn't figure it out. And they had a thing at church where you got on your knees at the end and they said, just pray whatever comes onto your heart. And I wasn't the kneel prayer type. I was like, I'm in a non-denominational church. I want to keep this really light. I want to just like check the box of going to church on a Sunday. But everybody else got on their knees. So I got on my knees and I started crying. And I said, God, why do I still drink alcohol when I say I don't want alcohol? And I had this image that came through as like a download or a voice spoke to me. And I pictured myself holding a cup and it was a wine glass. And God said, every time you're filling that with wine, you actually need to be filling it with me. You're actually missing me.
Mm.
And I like, oh, I get like goosebumps because it was this moment of clarity of like, that God-sized hole I was telling you about. Oh my gosh, there's something missing here. What is it? And so I went on a spiritual journey throughout trying to get sober. And I can say that, like, that is the little girl in me who was looking up at the stars. I felt like an alien on Earth because I was like, why do I think I'm so different?
Yeah.
And I think you and I, from what you're saying, it sounds like we're highly sensitive people, which you can look up HSP,
Yes.
documentaries on it. It's a phenomenal concept, and I hope it's true because that is the way to explain me. I'm a highly sensitive person.
I wrote about that in my book that I read an article, Elaine Aron, right? Highly sensitive person. I read the article and I was like, holy shit, I think that's what's wrong with me. Like, right. Like, whatever. I've dove into, what I know the correct grammar, but human design, I'm a projector. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. That's why I'm so different. I'm an empath. Yes, that's what it is. I'm all the things, right? I certainly have felt like an alien who showed up in the wrong place. When I got here, I was like, I did not, I think I was dropped off at the wrong place. I'd like to go back, please. I still feel like that sometimes.
Oh my
Please.
God. Some days I'm like, I'm all done here. I don't want to do this anymore.
This is, yes. Did I really sign up for this? This seems like this Earth stuff seems, yeah. Anyway, that's,
well, we can
yes.
call it Earth School because truly
Yes.
what you're saying is what I did as well. And it is
Yeah.
taking that cup that felt so empty now that I wasn't filling it with wine and I started to fill it with all those things that
Right.
I now call God shots. There are things in our lives, and funny play on words, shots,
Yeah.
but they're like these pierces in my heart of like, oh, that's why, or this makes sense, or I'm going through a really crappy breakup right now and I am staying sober through it. And it
Yeah.
is so difficult because I don't use alcohol to numb my feelings anymore.
Right.
And therefore, I have to feel all my feelings. I have to now pray about it, go to God, turn it over. I seem to be doing the same three things I did in early sobriety, which are steps 1, 2, and 3. I'm admitting that I'm powerless over my life. I believe there's a higher power who can take it away, but am I willing to give it to that higher power? And I think that's where so many people find themselves with alcohol. They don't actually like want to give it up. And
Yeah.
until you're willing to give it up and to actually give yourself, like I said, that breath, that pause, that time in your life without it, you're never going to know for sure if you feel better without it or not. Like,
Right.
why not give yourself the opportunity to do so? And if your addiction is way down the line and you cannot stop and you're on some full speed train, definitely get outsourced help,
Right.
see doctors, see the correct people. I'm not saying this for that far down the line, but
Right.
I'm really speaking to the woman who felt like me because I really wish I had this voice saying, this is how I feel. No one's talking about it, but here's how to get some help. And again, if you're too scared to ask a general population or a doctor or whatever, come to me, come to Amber. We have resources for you. I would love to help you. It literally brings me so much joy. And that, I guess, again, to answer your question, is like, what is filling my cup today? I found my purpose. And that is huge. And I want to
Yeah.
help others do the same because so many of us are numbing over the fact that we feel lack of purpose. And again, I could go further into that, but I'm going to save it for the book. I'm really excited that I'm finally going to like dive in and write this thing. I get asked all the time if I have a book, so it's coming.
I'm so proud of you. I was just today in my group WhatsApp for the 30-day challenge. That was the top. That's exactly what I talked about today was a sense of purpose. And I said, today I woke up, I took my kids to school, I went and I taught my empowered dance class, which I use my gifts. It's my happy place. And I know that the women that come leave feeling more empowered, more connected, more embodied. And then I knew that I was coming home and I was going to be having this conversation with you. And there's not a single part of me today that wanted to distract myself from my life. Now, that's not every day, right? Like you said, I mean, I let go of alcohol in February of 2020. And then guess what happened in March of 2020? We all know, global pandemic. So I went through a divorce. I went through owning a brick and mortar studio through the pandemic. I mean, and I was like, I had a moment, I was like, really, God? February of 2020, a month before the pandemic, that's when we decide that I'm not going to use that coping strategy anymore. But you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me because the sense of self-esteem and empowerment that I gained from being able to move through some of the most challenging things I've ever been through in my life and not sabotage or use something that was going to make me feel shame, it was so empowering. And so that's, yes, I want to be able to do that for other people.
Oh, and I
Um,
really commend you for getting sober a month before the pandemic because I think I had a year of sobriety and I'm not sure I would have stayed sober during the pandemic if I didn't have that year under my belt. Now, who knows? I'm again so impressed, but at the same time, let's just put it this way, there's never a good time to get sober. It's going to be
yeah,
like life gets lifey.
life
My
gets
life
lifey.
has, like you just stated, I went through a divorce, which we didn't even get into. I lost my dad last year in sobriety. I lost
Mm,
a woman who's like a second mother to me. I lost my 13-and-a-half-year golden retriever in the midst of my divorce being finalized. Like the amount of loss that I've endured during sobriety is, I feel, even more than previous to sobriety. But for some reason, the only thing I know is just don't drink today and that
mm,
everything will come in time, whether that's relief from the grief or whether there's a reason for why, which I'm still questioning my reason for why on this breakup, but I know it's coming. And I think, again, community support around this is so important. I honestly wasn't sure I was going to make today because I was in so much grief. And so I got up and I went to a meeting, even though I didn't want to go to a meeting. And guess what I did? I raised my hand and I shared my feelings for only 3 minutes. And
mm.
immediately following, I felt relief. And that's how I know this thing works. And that's why I love when people come, my clients, and share with me, because it's giving them some sort of relief to, like you said, work towards their purpose, go towards their alignment with their higher self, which I think we're all here to do. And we're all just guiding each other home. We're all just on
Yeah.
this path together. So I'm so grateful that our paths connected. And
Me too. Me too. Well, I want to honor your time because I know you have to get your kids. Where can people find you? What offerings do you have right now that you're excited to share? And then tell me a little bit about this book
oh gosh, okay. So
and a podcast. Don't you have a podcast too? You have all kinds of stuff happening right now.
I know it's all happening right now, which again, maybe that's the reason for the breakup, and I'm not even like letting myself let it hit me in the face. You can find me at KaitlinHenry.com. It's KAITLIN Henry.com. And then I also have a Substack that you can just find within there. I write a bit. And then, yes, I am starting a podcast, and that's formulating next week. So it'll probably be on air in a few weeks. And then I am starting with the same, actually, book coach and publishing house that you used. And I'm so,
Hey.
again, grateful for this alignment in my life at this time. But I am starting that book, and it's going to be a lot of what we talked about today. The, like you even said, pivot points in my life of why I had the experiences I had and how it guided me to where I am today and how all those experiences really helped me find my purpose. And then again, like giving it back to others. But there's so much today that we didn't get to talk about. And I'm going to really deep dive in the book about some of those vulnerable, really like emotional pieces of my story. Like I said, I had something happen in my youth. There were things in my marriage. Like I'm just going to dive into all of it because what I find is that when we share our truth and our pain, then it helps others do the same. And I really feel like that was a huge part of getting sober was I finally shared my truth. So I'm just going to keep word vomiting my truth and like, we'll see how it goes. I mean, you're a pillar and an example, and I'm so grateful because I'm like, well, if Amber can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what I have found is, we both said how alone we felt a lot of our lives. Like, and I have found that by sharing everything through my one woman show that I wrote and my book, the response that I have received from people telling me how much they relate, I'm like, you do? Really? You like, I'm not as odd as I thought I was.
I thought no one felt like me. I was the
Yes.
only one.
Yes. But I've had so many people say to me, I literally had this woman reach out to me, and I don't know anything about her relationship with alcohol. I don't, to my knowledge, she doesn't have any issues with it. It was just about my story in general of being a woman who self-abandoned all of her life, right? But she literally said to me, I haven't cried this much from relating to someone else's story. I feel myself in your story. And I was like, thank you. Because I say that all the time too, right? Like, all the shit that we go through, if it's not so that we can be a source of inspiration to other women and men, but to say to them, listen, I know exactly how you feel because this is what I lived, and now I'm on this other side, and I'm here to hold your hand and remind you of how powerful you are.
Yeah.
Right. And I see you in that same way. I'm listening to you tell your story and the things that you're saying yes to, right? How powerful that is to say yes. I have people tell me all the time, I want to do what you're doing. Like, and I say, I just say yes, one step at a time. Each time I feel this call from my soul, I'm like, okay, here we go. And then I call in the team.
You can because you're not that hungover woman who is taking her kids to school, probably going home, crawling back under the covers. It's not
Yeah.
that I like started drinking again morning till night. It's where was I supposed to be when I was drinking because I wasn't in the right place at the right time. And now you're listening to
Mm,
that intuitive voice and you're like, I'm exactly where I need to be and I'm
yeah.
going to propel forward. And this is what I love about coaching. One small choice and one small step at a time. This whole book and podcast did not come overnight. This
That's
has
right.
been a long time coming and a long time of me ignoring my intuition, but also now following the breadcrumbs one step at a time and being scared shitless and doing it anyway. Because Brene Brown says, like, feeling the fear and doing it anyway is what makes courage. Like, again, she probably words it a lot better than me, but that's what it is. We're all, you and I are feeling this fear, but we're like, screw that. I care more about helping the woman who was me than I do about the fear of, am I going to be judged? Are people going to look at me and, judge the fact that I don't drink or think I have a worse problem than I have? I don't care anymore. I'm like,
Yeah.
again, releasing that shame, doing the step work, processing through mine with a coach and a therapist has been exponential in my recovery. So,
Yes. So I think that to end this, what I would say to anyone who's listening, take from Kaitlin's story, take from my story, take what resonates, leave the rest. Find the support you need. There are people and groups out there, of all kinds and all types that can help you wherever you're at. Speak it out loud. You are worthy. You deserve to feel good in your body. You deserve to live a life that you feel proud of. And it is possible. It is, if it is possible for me to live through everything I've lived through in the last 4.5 years and not numb through alcohol, and if it's possible for Kaitlin to live through everything she's lived through in the past 5 years and not numb with alcohol, then we know that it's possible for anyone who is willing to take that first step.
amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And until next time, friends, be well.
Thanks for having me.